Hello and welcome to this quick guide on how to utilize the full breadth of the crafting system in Diablo 4 to create the best legendary items specific to your character, your build, and your current power level. Now this can be done at any point in the game, but starts to become a lot more relevant around level 50 because you're going to be getting more legendary drops, and as you move into World Tier 3, sacred items get introduced and content's going to become more difficult, so you're going to need better items that sync more with your build in order to succeed. So as you progress through the game, there's basically going to be two main things you always want to be keeping your eye out for in order to enable you to craft your own legendaries. The first one is going to be rare or yellow items that have 2 or more stat rolls that are relevant to your class or build. And as you progress into World Tier 3, you're going to want to prioritize finding sacred yellow items that have stat rolls relevant to your build. And a sacred item is basically just a stat boosted item. It's a higher item level with more raw stats for the rarity and power level it rolled at. And the second thing you're going to be looking for are the legendary aspects that you really want to utilize for your build. And there's basically two main ways to acquire these. You can get them through extracting the aspect off of legendary drops that you get randomly, and you do this at the Arcanist. And then you can also get them from your codex. As you defeat dungeons throughout the world, you will add the aspect for that dungeon to your codex that you can later imprint on items. Now the biggest differences between these two methods are the codex that you get from the dungeons will always roll at the lowest end of the available stat window, so they're technically the worst way to put an aspect on, and they cost quite a bit more mats, some legendary materials. Whereas if you just extract an aspect from a legendary you already have, yes, it destroys the legendary, but now you have that aspect at the exact tier it was extracted from the item at, and it's only going to cost like a couple veiled crystals to put it back on. So cheaper mats to reapply the aspects if you extract them yourselves, and also the aspect is going to be scaled based on the item you pulled it off of versus being on the lowest end like it is from the codex. Along those same lines, something that's really useful to have toggled on for all this kind of stuff is the advanced tooltips in the gameplay options. And this is going to basically let you visualize the possible window of rolls that could have happened for each stat on each item. And this is basically what I'm referring to when I say that the legendary aspects from the codex imprint at the lowest available stats is they're always at the very bottom of this available stat window, whereas the aspects you pull off of legendaries are oftentimes in the middle or could be at the very top end of this available stat window, right? The biggest problem with a lot of legendary drops you just get inherently is they don't have the proper base stats to complement the legendary perk. And so, every once in a while you'll get that dream roll where it has the few stats you really need combined with the legendary perk you really need, but a lot of times it gives you, like, for sorcerer items, for example, fire damage and fire skill stat rolls with like an ice perk or something like that, right? And so basically the legendaries that you're not equipping, you want to be kind of dividing into two categories. One is, hey, I really like this legendary perk. I want to pull it off and use it for later. Or I don't like these stat rolls or this legendary perk. I'm going to turn this legendary into legendary materials by salvaging it so that I can use it to enhance other legendary stuff. All right, so as you're playing through the game, you're always looking for those yellows with 2 or more stat rolls relevant to your build, and you're always looking for legendary aspects that are good for your build. So bring it all together. We're basically going to combine these two things to craft the best legendary gear with the best possible stats and the aspects we want. So the very first thing we're going to do is take that yellow item to the Arcanist and try to re-enchant the worst stat roll with something better. A couple other things worth paying attention to are, is that yellow sacred? Meaning it's just going to have inherently a higher base item value and higher base stats. Are there a total of 3 or 4 rolls on it? And how high are each of those rolls in the available window they could have rolled at, which is what we toggled on with this advanced tooltip. So taking all that information into account, you basically want to try to re-roll the worst stat on your yellow item while it's still yellow. Because to enchant or to re-roll one of the stats on a yellow item is much cheaper materials-wise than it is to try to re-roll a stat on a legendary item. So now that you have a really beefy yellow item with rolls really relevant to your build, you're going to want to add the exact legendary aspect that you need to create essentially Abyss legendary item for your exact class build and power level. And then from here, you're going to want to add a socket if it doesn't already have one. Then you're going to take it to either the jeweler or the blacksmith to fully upgrade it. And then boom, all of a sudden you have a totally gangster, essentially BIS legendary for your build and power level with the exact core stats and the exact aspect you want ready to rip. So I hope all that makes sense. I hope it's useful. This is basically what I've been doing to sort of keep myself in some of the best legendary gear I can as I'm trying multiple different builds with Sorcerer. The very last thing I will say is using the obols at that obol vendor to get the random rolls on stuff is a really good way to either find good yellows that you can use to upgrade like this, or to get legendaries that you can salvage for materials, or that you can pull the aspect off of and put on your yellow. So basically dumping those badges into the item slots that you have that are weak or that you're trying to replace with legendaries, and keeping the yellows you get from it to upgrade, or salvaging or extracting the aspects from the legendaries you get from those obols is like a really good way to sort of fuel this crafting fire. And a really good way, it seems like, to spend those opals effectively to keep your gear relevant and powerful. All right, that's it for me. I hope you found this useful, and hope you are able to slay more demons quicker because of it. So take care, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.